What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today I'm bringing you a 3-round mock draft. First time I've done 3 rounds on the channel, but gives you an idea of what I think might happen over the entire day 1 and 2 of the 2021 NFL Draft. Thank you for clicking on the video. If you enjoyed, please hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. Also, if you're new to the channel, like football content, please consider subscribing. It would mean the world to me. And be active in the comment section. Let me know what picks you think I'm right on with and which ones you think I'm completely off about. And then who's your favorite team and who do you want them to take over the course of day 1 and 2. Also, before we get underway, apologies, content's been a little slow on my channel as of late. I've actually been in the process of moving. I am now into my new apartment. So now that I'm moved in, there's still some things to do, but 90% done. Content's going to start picking back up here soon enough. But with that aside, that's not the rambling you care about. Instead, let's ramble about this 3-round mock draft. You can basically start with the draft with Trevor Lawrence's name etched into the board for the Jags. Same, honestly, could be said about Zach Wilson going number 2. It's kind of interesting. The Draft Network has moved Pitts up to number 2 player on their board. That's kind of interesting. I almost kind of want to do a video. Let me know in the comments if you'd be interested, like an outside the box but cool pick for each and every team. Like, obviously, the Niners are going to go QB. But, man, if they just added Kyle Pitts, it'd be really fun and really different. But nonetheless, I think Justin Fields has got to be the pick here. Also, since this is 3 rounds, I'm going to kind of go through this as quick as I can so it's not too long of a video, especially if it's picks that I've done previously. But I think Fields has got to be the pick here, right? Like, he's worked with Shanahan at his QB camp. He's got high upside. He brings a lot of athletic ability to the table, something that they don't have. And I just don't think you trade up to 3 to get Mac Jones, right? Like, if you wanted to trade up to get Mac Jones, you trade up to 7 here at the Lions. Or, I mean, obviously we didn't know it until now, but 8. Now Carolina's trying to move back. You know, like, that's a Mac Jones trade-up spot. You move up to 3, you're going with an upside play. And I think Fields, in a lot of ways, before the college football season this past year, I would have been hard-pressed to believe that it wasn't Lawrence Fields going 1 and 2. Like, that's how good this QB class is, and that's how good Zach Wilson is. He earned that number 2 spot. But Fields has got to be the pick here in my book. But if it's Jones, the Atlanta Falcons are in the best seat. But if it is Jones, Atlanta's in a prime position to get a haul for this number 4 pick. And I think they should trade down if they're not going to go QB. So I'm not doing trades in this. So you could look at it as the Falcons taking their QB in the future and Trey Lance, or since I can't really do trades because I'm not a premium member here on the Draft Network, think about whoever the Falcons are trading back with taking a QB here at 4. I think there's going to be 4 QBs taking 4 picks in a row. Because if the Falcons don't take a QB, they're not maximizing the value of this number 4 pick. I do like Kyle Pitts here, and it's another element to that offense, but was the offense really the problem last year? No. So if you're not going QB, trade down with Denver at 9, maybe New England at 15, someone like that, and then go defense. You could even go back as far as Washington at 19, Chicago at 20. I think Chicago might be desperate enough to really give you a huge package, especially if it's Lance or Fields on the board. So move back there, you take a defensive player, and you get some extra assets as well. But since there's no trades in this mock draft, Trey Lance goes number 4. And then we get to the Bengals. And, man, I almost caved in and went Penei Sewell, but you'll see. I think there's going to be a really quality offensive lineman there at the top of the board in round 2. Though the reason I almost took Sewell is apparently he's been told teams are liking the idea of him playing right tackle. And then after this year, the Bengals don't have Riley Reiff under contract. He's only on a 1-year deal, so it makes sense Sewell could just be that right tackle of the future. But I think there's good options for that position in round 2, but we'll get to that. I think you go best player available here in Kyle Pitts. I get Jamar Chase has that chemistry with Joe Burrow, but Drew Sample's your tight end, and Kyle Pitts is more than just a tight end, right? Like, he could be the best wide receiver in this class. Like, he might be better than Jamar Chase if he was a wide receiver. Like, there would be an argument. Dude's huge. He runs a 4.4, and as an inline tight end, he creates a ton of mismatches. Like, there's no safety covering him. There's no linebacker covering him. He's too athletic, too big for safeties, too big for corners, and he can do so much over the middle of the field. Not that Chase can't. It's 1A, 1B, really. But I just like Pitts here. I'm sticking with the pick. I think he's the best pass catcher in this class, and it's a huge time upgrade for the Bengals. Though, again, if you go Penei Sewell here and then De'Ami Brown at round 2, I'd love that draft just as much. Like, I think the Bengals are really in a no-lose situation as long as they, address some needs and they're not going crazy, especially in round 2 and maybe even round 3. As long as they're not doing something outside the box, go offensive line, go pass catcher, and you'll be good to go. Rambling aside, let's move on to the Dolphins. I think they want Pitts, but in this case, you got to go Jamar Chase. I'm really tempted by Rashawn Slater here, especially if it's Sewell here at 5. Slater's most played position, the position where he got the most snaps, was right tackle. Maybe he's the blindside protector for Tua Tagovailoa. Then you go pass catcher later on in the draft. I don't know. It's another one of those outside-the-box picks that I think would be a good fit despite it not being what we think is going to happen. It's not the consensus move. On to the Lions here at 7. I think in this case, if the board played out like this is a trade-down spot here for Detroit. But since there's no trades, you go BPA, you take Penei Sewell. Huge upside, and again, teams are asking him to play right tackle. Already have Taylor Decker at left tackle, so it makes sense. Sewell could be your plug-and-play right tackle. Huge upgrade over Tyrell Crosby, and DeAndre Swift would be smiling from ear to ear. On to the Panthers here at 8. Another team that's discussing trading down, but with no trades. Rashawn Slater makes a ton of sense, right? If the Greg Little experiment doesn't work at left tackle, Slater's your option there. If you don't get to keep Taylor Moton at right tackle and Little's good at left, then Slater's your future right tackle. Or if they both play well, you keep Moton around and Little's solid, Slater's a Pro Bowl, all-pro level guard. And then, again, you're helping everybody. Helping Sam Darnold / Teddy Bridgewater. Helping Christian McCaffrey. It's just, you can't really go wrong with Slater here at 8. It's great value. And then we get to the Broncos here at 9. I think Mac Jones makes a ton of sense. Sit in the pocket. He'd have a ton of weapons around him. Pretty solid offensive line. Garrett Bowles played really well. A lot better than expected at left tackle. Maybe Lloyd Cushenberry wasn't great at center, but it was his rookie year last year. Let's give him a break. And then Juwan James has been in and out of the lineup, and even when he's been in the lineup, he hasn't been great at right tackle, but you can address that later on. But I think they believe in Drew Lock, and I don't think they want to be wrong. And I think they have an idea of maybe going QB in round 2 like they did with Drew Lock. So I think Mac Jones makes a ton of sense. Sit in the pocket, give him a bunch of weapons, and he could pick apart opposing defenses, and it makes that offense maybe good enough, maybe not as good as Kansas City, because that's obviously tough to live up to, but it makes them on a status where they have a great defense and a good enough offense to compete. And the same thing, then that offense might be as good, maybe even better than the Chargers. Totality, like speaking as a whole. But I'm going to go Micah Parsons here. They already have a good defense, but Parsons just adds to it even more. Tremendous scheme fit. I've had this pick for a long time now, so we'll go ahead and move on to the Cowboys. Won't talk about this one a whole lot. I'm really contemplating J.C. Horn. It feels like he's getting a ton of buzz and might climb up the boards, and plus Dallas just likes being different, wants to do something outside the box. But I'm going to stick with Patrick Surtain, and that helps that defense so much. I like Trevon Diggs. Did he get burned last year? Yeah, sure. But he was a rookie, and he was covering number 1s. Now you slide him to that number 2 CB spot. Surtain plays a lot like his dad, where he's not necessarily overly athletic, but he has good side. He's technically sound. He's like a B+ over every category that makes up a good cornerback. Like, he doesn't do anything fantastic, but man, he's really solid at so many different things. So Surtain becomes CB1, Diggs to CB2, and that defense is starting to look really, really good. And outside the box picks, man, Jalen Phillips, don't sleep. That could be in play here. Like, I would not doubt if somebody in Dallas is fighting to have Jalen Phillips be the pick here at 10, because medical concerns aside, he's a top 10 level type of player. Then we get to the Giants, and again, I mean, you need edge. I wouldn't doubt Jalen Phillips being in consideration. He's got that 3-4, 4-3 versatility. But I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. He's an upgrade over Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. And especially considering you have Shepard under contract for just one more year. Waddle worked largely out of the slot. I think he can work outside, but a lot of his success came in the slot. So it could be something where you have Golladay and Slayton on the outside moving forward and Waddle on the inside working from the slot. But for this upcoming year, you have 4 really solid wide receivers, 2 really good ones, in my opinion, in Waddle and Golladay, and then 2 solid ones, and then you have Kyle Rudolph, you have Evan Ingram, you have Saquon Barkley, maybe the most talented running back in football. you're getting rid of all excuses for Daniel Jones. It allows you to put all the pieces in place and figure out in year 3, is Jones our guy? If not, we need to find out and get a better option in the next offseason, and then really take full advantage of the skill position group and the talent on that offense. Next up's the Eagles at 12. This could definitely be J.C. Horn, and then you go receiver, top of round 2. I just think Devonta Smith is exactly what this team's needs, right? Like, Jalen Reagor is a field stretcher, especially from the slot, and I like him in that position. I don't think Travis Fulgham's bad. Greg Ward is so-so at best. I think Fulgham on the outside with Devonta Smith is a good enough pairing. You play Reagor in the slot. And I will say, Devonta Smith, have they updated this? No, they haven't. It was reported he was playing at 170. Actually was weighed at 166, I think 2 days ago from the time I'm recording this. And I will say, it's just 4 pounds, but 170, sounds a whole lot better than 166. And it's just a trick our mind plays on us. But nonetheless, Devonta Smith might be the best separator in the class as a route runner. He has great hands. He's solid after the catch. He's a good enough athlete. And if you can get open and you have good hands, you have a 10-year career waiting in front of you. Like, there's always going to be a team on the phone waiting to give you a shot. If you can get open and you can catch open passes, there's going to be a team willing to give you a shot. And here with Philadelphia, you have the field stretcher in a Reagor. Devonta Smith can just be that guy you go to on 3rd and 8, gets open in big spots. I think it's a match made in heaven. Waddle wouldn't be a bad pick if the Giants go Smith instead. But I think wide receiver here. If you can get one of the big 3 at 12, I think that's tremendous value for Philly. Then we get to the Chargers here at 13. I'm standing pat here with Christian Darrisaw. Run block mauler, fantastic there. Great strength. His 2020 tape was tremendous. And I think there's a ton of upside as a pass blocker as well. He's going to keep getting better. Get the blindside protector for Justin Herbert. So I'm keeping that pick there. And this is a really tempting Jalen Phillips spot as well. Maybe even Jason Owe. Those 3-cone, that's a big stat for Minnesota, but they don't tend to take edge in round 1. That's not typically their MO. That could change. You could definitely use an edge rusher opposite of Danielle Hunter, but that offensive line, especially losing Riley Reiff, who was better than expected last year, you got to find an option across that offensive line. And maybe Vera Tucker is your left tackle. That's where he played at USC, and he was pretty solid. I mean, honestly, just throw on the tape. He was really damn good. Maybe not the ideal size for a left tackle, but the tape speaks for itself. Or after a year of development, Ezra Cleveland might be ready to go make the jump from guard to tackle. So there's options there for Minnesota, but you got to improve that offensive line. Or you keep Cleveland on the inside, you keep Vera Tucker on the inside as well. You throw somebody out at left tackle, and you just try to pound the rock up the middle, let Dalvin Cook get to the second level, and let him do what he does best in the open field. And I don't necessarily think this is super realistic. As much as I make these mock drafts what I think will happen, Mac Jones is not going to fall to 15. If he falls past 10, I think the Pats make the move up to 11, 12, something like that, and they take Mac Jones. But nonetheless, them ending up with Mac Jones, it could be that Brady 2.0. I can see why people are giving him that comp. Makes a ton of sense. He's probably a better option than Cam Newton at this point, though I don't know. Cam might still have something left in the tank. Full offseason certainly helps, and now he's definitely got a better skill position group around him. But Mac Jones, QB the future, definitely a good move there for New England. And then J.C. Horn here at 16 makes a ton of sense for Arizona. And I've actually heard that the Giants are taking trade down offers, which is crazy for Dave Gettleman. And I feel like they would be in talks with Arizona, right? Like if Surtain goes 10, you get to a team with Philadelphia at 12, they could go corner. The Chargers easily could go corner. The Patriots, you never know, could go corner, especially if all the QBs are gone. Like, I could see the Cardinals being in talks with the Giants for the 11th pick. You move up 5 spots, you make sure you get Horn, but nonetheless, no trades, and in this case, Horn falls in their lap. Next up, the Raiders. I'm keeping it with Tevin Jenkins. You have a hole at right tackle. He's a fantastic run blocker. Needs to get better as a pass blocker, but young, raw, still getting better. Needs more reps. But Josh Jacobs would love this pick, no doubt about it. Next up, we get to the Dolphins. And again, talking about weight, we kind of talked about it with Devonta Smith, but Zaven Collins coming in, 10, 11 pounds heavier than what he last weighed in at. And it seems like maybe he's going to be making the move to like 3-4 outside linebacker, which would be a great fit in Miami. I liked this pick regardless, even before the weigh-in and before the idea of him maybe just shifting to outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. I like the versatility of playing inside, outside, and also once you're 260, going up to 270 isn't that big of a deal, right? Like percentage-wise, percentage of weight, it's not huge. It's just we hear 10, 11 pounds and we're like, whoa, what happened? So I think there's still versatility for Zaven Collins to play inside or out. You have Benardrick McKinney, you have Jerome Baker, who I think are good enough for this year. McKinney, I think, is a free agent next offseason. But nonetheless, this is a team that needs edge rush help. And if Zaven Collins is that guy, 3-4 outside linebacker, he can also drop into coverage. I think that's fantastic. Then we get to the Washington football team at 19. I'm keeping it with Joke. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah would be a tremendous fit in that defense for Ron Rivera. The only knock I've heard about this pick is that maybe Landon Collins is already the same thing. But what I would argue in return is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is younger and still getting better, has way less injury concerns, and makes a ton less money. Next year, I think you can cut Collins and save $8 million against the cap. I know the cap's going up, but there's no reason, especially with Collins' injury history and inability to stay on the field, no reason to pay him that money if you have a replacement already in line. And I think Joke could take this defense from already really, really good to just next level, probably the best defense in football. Next up, the Bears. They're kind of stuck in no man's land, right? 20th pick is a tough spot to be finding yourself in. This could be Trevon Moehrig. I wouldn't hate that pick. I think they reach down the board just a little bit, and they go Sam Cosmi. I think he's a plug-and-play left tackle. I get there's a lot of people saying that he should be in the second round, but I think he's a 30 to 35 player in this draft, somewhere in that range. So 20, yeah, it's definitely reach, but there's no great pick really for Chicago to make here. So I'll go with Cosmi, plug-and-play tackle, probably on the left. Maybe you move Leno over to right, you cut Massey, or maybe Cosmi replaces Bobby Massey at right tackle. But nonetheless, it's a position of need. You reach down the board a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit, and you get a guy who could potentially be your left tackle for the next 10 years. Speaking of tackle, this could be in play here for the Colts, but with Jalen Phillips falling this far, this is where the slide stops. I mean, I think he's potentially a top 10 player in this class. Just off of his skill, you take away the medical concerns, he's a stud. And edge is a huge need. He's a perfect fit in a 4-3 defense. I think Phillips can play in a 3-4, like I said when the Giants were on the clock. But him in a 4-3 is just lethal, and definitely a big-time need for the Colts, and I think you can wait on tackle till round 2. Next up, we get the Tennessee Titans, and I'm giving them Rashad Bateman. I know he weighed in a little bit light at the Minnesota Pro Day, but I think that's just like COVID weight he hasn't been able to add back on, but I think over time that's going to eventually be added back, and especially once you get into Tennessee's weight room, I know they're going to make that a focal point, but man, you give me 2019 Rashad Bateman with A.J. Brown, lights out, and then Josh Reynolds in the slot, and I have him taking tight end once we get to round 3, but you'll have to wait and stick around throughout this video, but I think this offense is going to be just as good as it was last year, maybe even better. But again, we're going to talk about that later. Next up, we get to the Jets, and this could definitely be Greg Newsome. He'd be a fantastic fit in that defense for Robert Saleh. But you already got your QB of the future, so this is already a productive, good first round. Take a risk. Go get Caleb Farley. If not for the back injury, he's CB1 in most people's eyes. So take a risk. Go for it. If he's able to overcome it, which I've heard conflicting things. Some people say it's a bigger deal, and some people say it's minimal, don't even worry about it. And that's kind of the nature of the NFL draft. There's just so much speculation. It could go so many different ways. But if Farley stays healthy, and maybe he's not even a guy who plays a 12-year career because of the back injury, but dude, if you get a good, really good 8 years out of him, that helps the defense tremendously. I think Bryce Hall's their number 1 corner, so a bit of a risky move, but if Farley's on the field, he's a huge upgrade for that secondary. Then we get to my favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette said that the Steelers are eyeing running back in the first round, and I am going to make the argument today, despite not being a fan of taking running back in round 1, that it can work out. I think this draft could still play out to be a really solid one if the Steelers go Najee Harris. I think he's their guy. I could see Etienne or Etienne, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I think the proper way in French is Etienne, but I think Etienne could be in play here. But I think Najee Harris is running back 1 on a lot of people's boards. Him or Javonte Williams, I think, are tremendous fits for what Pittsburgh wants to do. win the game at the line of scrimmage, which we're going to address later on in round 2, and power running game, and then try to take the load off of Ben's shoulders. So Najee Harris, the pick, first running back off the board. And it could be back-to-back running backs. I mean, Travis Etienne and James Robinson would be a formidable running back duo. But I'm going to stick with Trevon Moehrig here. Interesting to see he's fallen down the board a little bit here on the Draft Network. I've said it 1,000 times. He could be the best free or strong safety in this class. Dude's a stud. Makes a ton of sense. And this was a team that I said during free agency, if Justin Simmons hits the market, give him all the money he could ever ask for. And since he didn't hit the open market, instead has re-signed with Denver, this is about as close as a Justin Simmons-like player as you're going to get. Can play deep in coverage, can be around the line of scrimmage, hard-hitting, good tackler, does it all. Tremendous pick, and definitely a big upgrade for Jacksonville. Then we get to the Browns, and I think this is exactly what they want to have happen. I don't know if it does, but they cut Sheldon Richardson, and I was already planning on mocking Barmore to him because Barmore, I think, is better than Sheldon Richardson as of right now, or potentially maybe even in year 1 is better than Richardson, but certainly long term, definitely a better option. Younger, has a higher ceiling, makes less money. And then they cut Richardson, and I was like, all right, well, Barmore feels like a shoo-in there in round 1, but maybe they're eyeing Davion Nixon round 2, 3, whatever, Milton Williams, someone else. But I think Barmore is a perfect fit. You throw him next to Andrew Billings. You have the nose tackle, the run stopper next to Barmore, who is inconsistent in the run game, but shown flashes to be a solid enough run stopper, but is tremendous rushing the passer. And then you have Jadeveon Clowney and Tack McKinley on one side, kind of rotating on that edge spot, and then Myles Garrett. That front four is going to be insane if this plays out like it has in this mock draft. Next up is the Baltimore Ravens at 27, and I think Kwity Paye could fit into a 3-4, but Azeez Ojulari already is a 3-4 outside linebacker who could play in a 4-3. Again, a lot of these guys have versatility, right? Like, just go get the QB, right? Like, we'll make it work. But Azeez Ojulari is a perfect scheme fit, and he's a long-term answer at that position for Baltimore. This could be wide receiver, especially with Terrence Marshall, on the board. Even Elijah Moore could be in play here, but Pernell McPhee is on a 1-year deal, and I'm not really crazy about his skill set. I like Tyus Bowser, and I like Tyus Bowser a whole lot more if Azeez Ojulari is the main edge threat on this team. So I think it just makes everybody better in it. You know, this is a team that wants to run the football and play good defense. Azeez Ojulari fits that MO, especially obviously on the defensive side. Next up, we get the Saints. This is the Greg Newsome spot. He could go a whole lot higher than 28, but corner's a huge need. Kind of worried about what might happen with Marshawn Lattimore and his off-the-field situation. But even if Lattimore's playing, they need a number 2 corner. They don't have Jenkins. They don't have Eli Apple anymore. So big position of need, and it's hard to win games at the NFL level without one shutdown corner and a solid number 2. But honestly, I'd argue if you want to be a serious playoff contender, you need 2 at least B-plus level corners to make it work. And Newsome could be that, with Lattimore opposite him on the other side of the field. So love that pick for New Orleans. Got to keep that defense good, especially considering Jameis Winston is turnover prone, so he may put your defense in a bad situation. Next up is Green Bay, and I really want to go wide receiver here. Like, I'd love to see Kadarius Toney just be a field-stretching slot player, but I think if they're going to go wide out, it's going to be in round 2. So I'm going to go corner here. Kevin King's on a 1-year deal, but I just think Eric Stokes is a better Kevin King. Maybe a little bit smaller than King, but liked his tape. And I think he has, in a lot of people's eyes, including my own, surpassed Tyson Campbell, who I have had at this spot for Green Bay. It feels like a Green Bay pick where Campbell's probably available in round 2 to them, but they want to go out there and get their guy, and he sneaks in the end of round 1. But Stokes, tremendous player. I think an upgrade over Kevin King, potentially day 1, if not by the end of the year. Like the pick a lot, and as much as I'd love to see them go wide receiver, Allen Lazard, MVS, proved to be good enough last year. And when you have an MVP caliber quarterback and Aaron Rodgers, is that a position you need to address in round 1? Maybe you make the argument you don't, but you do get an impact player in Stokes. Next up, the Bills get an absolute steal here. Kwity Paye almost assuredly probably doesn't fall to 30. And there's also been rumblings that they would go running back, but if Paye is on the board, sprint the card in. No doubt, perfect fit into that 4-3. And then you have Epineza on the other side. A couple other aging edge rushers like Mario Addison who can help, push those players along. Because Epineza and Paye alike, both are raw prospects. Pay did not get that many snaps at Michigan, and it was really up until this year that he didn't really have a whole lot of production. It was a whole lot better this past year at Michigan, though. So the guys who are still getting better, that curve is still on the upswing. So great sign there for Buffalo, and they get a potential elite edge rusher of the future. Next up's Kansas City, and this could definitely be tackle Alex Leatherwood, maybe Brady Christensen, maybe Walker Little if you're a fan of him going in the first round. I don't know where to put him in these mock drafts, but I'm going to give him Terrence Marshall Jr., right? Like, they need that big body guy opposite of Tyreek Hill, in addition to Travis Kelce, who's a tight end but does a whole lot of things across the field. Need a wide receiver of the future. Terrence Marshall, I think, is a great fit for that offense. And you can get a tackle in round 2, which we will get to. Next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I loved giving them Christian Barmore, but with him off the board, Jason Owe is just like the perfect passion project for that defense, right? Like, JPP's only got 1 year left on his deal. Owe is, I don't even necessarily want to say raw. Yeah, like, I think he's less raw than someone like Gregory Rousseau. It's just, you look at Owe and you see no sacks, and you know it's hard to fight for that. But the QB pressures were there, and you watch him as a pass rusher, and he knows how to use his hands. He knows how to beat offensive linemen. The stats just didn't pile up in his favor. I mean, this was the guy, if he had 10 sacks last year, we're talking about him being a top 10 pick, given his athletic ability. So I think the Bucs are all for the project. Develop him, make him that much better as a pass rusher than him and Shaq Barrett moving forward as the edge rushers on that defense. That is filthy. Then we get to the Jags at the top of round 2. I think this is an offensive tackle spot. And this could definitely be Alex Leatherwood. Liam Eichenberg also makes sense, but I think Dylan Radunz could be a left tackle of the future. Cam Robinson's playing on the franchise tag. Also, they're shopping Andrew Norwell. So Radunz has that inside-out versatility where he could be your Robinson replacement or your Norwell replacement, especially after sitting for a year or just being a swing tackle really for a year. That's probably how they use him. So I like Radunz there. It could be any of those players there at 33 that I mentioned, but here, the slide stops for Rousseau, right? Like the upside with Rousseau is first round written all over him. And I think Robert Saleh is the guy to try to make it work, especially in a 4-3 defense. Though Saleh does mix things up, and he's very creative. Rousseau could be a guy that you develop as an edge rusher, but then on obvious passing downs, a lot of his success in Miami or at Miami came on the interior, rushing against guards and obviously centers. And I love Rousseau as a guy who, third down and longs, you bring him into the field, and it's just an extra pass rusher. And really, it's a pass rusher that the Jets don't have. I mean, I know they have Quinnen Williams, but Rousseau would add to that and makes it that much harder to throw against the Jets on those obvious passing situations. So I think Robert Saleh would love to see him fall to 34. Then we get to the Falcons, and this is typically where I've had Najee Harris going, but with the Steelers taking him at 24, obviously he's not available. So get the next best thing. Arthur Smith gets his Derrick Henry light type of player. Javonte Williams is, in a lot of ways, a clone of Najee Harris. Similar skill set. They're not going to break the big gains, but power runners, going to get 4 or 5 yards every time they touch the football. Harris has been proven as a pass catcher. I think Javonte Williams could be a good pass catcher as well. So I think Arthur Smith gets his bell cow running back. And also, I like Williams in the sense that he was splitting carries at UNC, right? Like, there's a whole lot of tread left on those tires, similar to what we talked about with Josh Jacobs coming out of Alabama. Next up, we get the Dolphins. This could be a running back spot. I wouldn't be surprised if Travis Etienne's the pick here, but I think here, I'm going to go Jalen Mayfield. And I get why people have had him fall out of the first round. I still see the upside, right? Like, didn't test great at the pro day, and not a great pass protector, great run blocker. So maybe you keep Robert Hunt at right tackle and you move Mayfield to right guard. I think that's definitely an upgrade. But it's a seamless transition for Mayfield. It's not like you're making him go from right to left tackle. You keep him at right tackle, and obviously needs to be coached up some. And maybe he doesn't even play this year, but it's an upside move, and he could be the future protector for Tua at that right tackle position. So we went wide receiver earlier with Philadelphia. Now I'm going to go corner, the next biggest need. I think Kelvin Joseph is worth taking the risk on. Obviously, you have the off-the-field concerns, and you need to make sure that's all settled. But, man, if not for that, he's a first-round caliber corner. Like, he's probably the pick over Eric Stokes, almost assuredly. He might, with no off-the-field concerns, he might be the pick over Greg Newsome, which is crazy to say. So I think Philly goes upside here. You got Smith in the first round. Go get a guy who could potentially be a shutdown CB1, has the size, has the athletic measurables, checks a lot of those boxes. You just need to make sure heads on straight. You take care of those off-the-field concerns, but the upside's there, especially in round 2. Go out there. You're years away from really being a Super Bowl contender. Go take a risk and get a potential cornerback 1. Then we get to the Bengals here at 38. And, like, this is the justification for why you go Kyle Pitts in round 1, or Jamar Chase, for that matter. I just like Pitts as the best pass catcher in the draft. You get Alex Leatherwood, right? Like, he could be your right tackle of the future. I could totally see him fitting into that spot. But even just day 1, while you have Reef at right tackle, Jonah Williams can continue to play left tackle. Leatherwood is a animal at left guard, and nobody would be happier with this pick than Joe Mixon. My God, running behind Alex Leatherwood, sign me up. If I'm Joe Mixon, I'm all about it. So I love that pick. And again, if it's Pitts Leatherwood like I have here, that's an A-plus caliber first 2 rounds for Cincy. But you can also flip the script and go Penei Sewell, De'Ami Brown here at 38. And that would be like an A-plus draft in my eyes. So the Bengals are sitting pretty no matter how they address this draft. Next, we get the Carolina Panthers. And I love Javon Holland in this spot, right? I think he's more of a free safety, but he did play a lot of nickel. If Carolina's in their base defense, I think Javon Holland can be your free safety. And maybe in obvious passing situations, and obviously there's a lot to be played out. You might find a late round gem. You might find a guy in the 4th round, you're like, all right, that's our nickel guy. Holland's going to be a free safety, or vice versa. You find a good safety, and Holland's going to be your nickel guy. But nonetheless, I just wouldn't take him off the field. Base defense, he's at free safety. You go nickel or bigger packages where you have multiple CBs, play him in the slot. His drive on the football is elite. This guy has a nose for the football. Don't forget about his 2019 season. He was electric. And if it weren't for Trevon Moehrig being a stud, he's hands down CB1. I think there's an argument he should go in the 1st round. I love Javon Holland. I am high on him. Like, I know I am biased, but I love this pick here. And you have Jeremy Chin, who's an in-the-box safety. Holland can be that deep safety center fielder, but he can also be that nickel corner. He can just be a guy you can get 3 downs out of, which can be tough with certain nickel guys or certain safeties. Holland can be there all 3 downs. I love this fit for Carolina. Then we get to the Denver Broncos. And I mentioned earlier, it makes sense to go Mac Jones. But I think they want to see what Drew Lock has. So that's why I think Davis Mills is a pick here. If you go Mac Jones, you're probably starting him. If you take Mac Jones at 9, you're probably starting him over Drew Lock. You're not going to waste a top 10 pick for a guy who's going to sit the bench. I mean, I guess you could, but at least if it's Mac Jones, right? If it was Trey Lance, you don't mind sitting him because he's raw and you need to get him there. But Mac Jones is a high floor guy. You get him on the field. Here in round 2, Davis Mills is not a high floor guy. He's somebody who 400-something snaps at Stanford, like 15 games played. We didn't get to see a whole lot of them. And the same thing we'll talk about with Walker Little. Maybe he looked okay. I think Little looked really good when we did get to see him at Stanford. But Mills, had good enough production. He was solid. He has the size. He checks a lot of boxes at the QB position, but we didn't get to see that developmental curve. And he was a highly touted recruit, which is not the end-all, be-all. And obviously Stanford liked him enough. Gave him a scholarship, gave him a spot on the roster. We didn't get to see a whole lot of them, but that almost makes me think that with the right coaching, there's a whole lot more to get out of Davis Mills. So he is not a day 1 starter. So you still get to see what Drew Lock is all about. And if it doesn't work out, you have a guy moving forward who you can feel comfortable with as the potential QB of the future. You don't have to rush Mills into the lineup. You can see what Lock has, and if it's not good, you have a backup plan in place, which is obviously key. You don't want to roll out with Bryce Rippon. You don't want to roll out with Jeff Driscoll. Have Mills ready to go if Locke is a disaster this upcoming year. And then if Locke works out, it's a 2nd round pick versus the 9th overall pick. And even then, if Locke works out, Mills might still have some trade value. Think, Jimmy Garoppolo from years past with New England. On to the Detroit Lions at 41, and this would be like such a money draft. Like, I know this is a trade down spot, or I said it was a trade down spot in the 1st round, but if the Lions got Penei Sewell, and then they took a number 1 caliber guy in De'Ami Brown or Elijah Moore, it'd be fantastic. I think I'm going to give him Elijah Moore. Typically, I've been going De'Ami Brown. But they have Tyrell Williams and Perriman, who are not long-term answers to that position. But Moore is that slot receiver that they don't have. But I do think Moore can play on the outside. But flip a coin. Moore or you go De'Ami Brown, who is a bona fide outside, big play guy waiting to happen. Elijah Moore cannot stay on the board but for so long. And he's probably a 1st-round guy. So I don't want to have him falling too far. And the same could be said about Kadarius Toney. It's just tough fitting 6, 7 wide receivers in the first round, so somebody's going to fall. On to the Giants at pick number 42, and I have been going Joseph Ossai. But dude, Joe Tryon is climbing up the boards. He's getting hot, and he's a great fit for that 3-4 defense. He has a ton of versatility, dropping back into coverage, playing in open space, and obviously didn't play in 2020. You feel like he can continue to get better as a pass rusher, which he's already a good pass rusher. He's a better pass rusher than Joseph Ossai is right now. So I think you go with Tryon. You try to get that edge threat that this team just doesn't have, but he can also play in open space. So a guy who could sneak into the end of round 1. Giants get great value at 42. Next up, the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if Asante Samuel is on the board at 43, but if he is, have Raheem Mostert himself, fastest guy on the team, sprint the card in. I mean, Asante Samuel would be a tremendous fit. In a lot of ways, he plays like his dad, but also, like, you can think about Richard Sherman in some ways. Like, Richard Sherman is not the most athletically gifted in the sense he's not super fast, but he knows how to watch tape. He's super smart, and he's very instinctual. And a lot of the same could be said about Asante Samuel. Samuel's not 6'3" like Sherman. He's smaller, and he's much more like his dad, but I just think this would be a tremendous fit. And then with San Francisco getting Justin Fields at QB and then Asante Samuel, you have addressed your biggest needs for this upcoming season. You have put yourself as potential frontrunners in the NFC. Next up is the Dallas Cowboys, and a couple of different players you could go with here. It's good to see Carlos Basham has moved up, I think, like 10 spots here on the TDN rank, and I think he's the pick here in round 2. They need an edge rusher opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence. I can't even tell you who the other defensive end is. I looked it up, couldn't even remember his name. That's how bleak it is at that other DN spot. Basham Jr. with DeMarcus Lawrence, and Basham Jr. is a guy who is getting hot at the right time. And I like what I see from Carlos Basham Jr. And I have my defensive position rankings coming out later this week, so you'll hear me talk about him more in that video. But I like Basham a ton, especially in a 4-3 defense. Him and DeMarcus Lawrence. And then you have Neville Gallimore, who, if you feel comfortable with him taking that leap in year 2 as an interior disruptor, boom, that pass rush is fixed. Dan Quinn has already adjusted the linebacking core to where I think it's better fit for Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith, and they brought in Keanu Neal, who's going to play some weak side linebacker, who's a good coverage option at that, and a hard hitter. That defense is looking a lot better. Keep in mind, they went Patrick Surtain in round 1, and I don't think they're done with defense. We're going to get to that once we get to the 3rd round, though. Next up's the Jags. I think this is a great spot to go tight end. They definitely need one, and Baby Gronk is the moniker Pat Freiermuth has been given. I don't think that's really fair to call anybody Baby Gronk just because that's a ton to live up to, but it's a team that needs a tight end. They don't have Tyler Eifert anymore, and they have an abundance of wide receivers, and I don't think they need to go with a slot guy. Like, I've been seeing a bunch of people give them Amari Rodgers or Rondale Moore, or if he falls to him, Kadarius Toney, someone like that. I just don't think they need that. I think Laviska Shenault can be that gadget slot guy, but Shenault can play on the outside. Regardless, Pat Freiermuth, I think, is a bigger need here, and a perfect red zone threat. You have him and DJ Chark. Makes it tough for opposing defenses to try to lock in on just one or the other. Best player available, you got to go Jamin Davis here if you're New England. I don't know if he's available at 46, but if he is, again, sprint the card in, because that's a first-round caliber guy. He might be, in some people's eyes, he's probably linebacker 3 over Zaven Collins, especially if Zaven Collins is going to make the position move to outside linebacker more full-time. Jamin Davis, no doubt, is linebacker number 3, but he's that good, and he's still getting better. Like, he didn't start until this last year, and game by game, you can just see him getting better and better and better. And if he's playing for Bill Belichick in the NFL, my word, the sky is the ceiling. I'd love to see that. Then we get to the Chargers here at 47, and this is typically where I've had Joe Tryon going. I'm going to give him Joseph Ossai. Perkins and Turner are more 4-3 guys. I guess Turner could fit at defensive end in a 3-4, but the way I'm looking at their defense is you have Joey Bosa and Jerry Tillery at the 3-4 DN spots, and I think they're good fits there. You have Uchenna Nwosu at one of the outside linebacker positions, and you can have Ossai be the other. Obviously, he's raw. Only 1 year as an edge rusher, and if all else fails and his explosiveness isn't suited well at that edge position and you can't coach him up and make him a better pass rusher and more polished at that spot, you have a good another inside linebacker. You compare him with Kenneth Murray, who you took in the first round last year. So I think Ossai is one of those high floor guys because you can use him in a lot of different ways, but he also has a high ceiling in the sense that if he can be coached up and refined into a better pass rusher, he's plenty explosive. And that'll take that defense to a super high ceiling. Like him, Bosa, I like Jerry Tillery, which I don't know, Wosu has plenty of traits you can like in an outside linebacker rushing the passer. And obviously Osai can play in space in a 3-4. There's a lot to like there, and I think that's a good fit for Osai as well as for the Chargers. Now we're on to the Raiders at 48. I'm going to give him a safety here in Jamar Johnson. I typically been going Richie Grant, but Jamar Johnson's ability to just make plays on the football is just ridiculous. He's not a great tackler, but you have Jonathan Abram as that box safety, that linebacker to safety kind of hybrid. Jamar Johnson, just have him play center field in that cover 3 defense and just read the QB's eyes. He takes great routes to the football. And Jamar Johnson's not necessarily the fastest guy, but again, safeties play so far away from the line of scrimmage, you have that cushion. And his routes to the football, maybe second to none. Like him and Marek. Like his ability to go make up and get to a deep pass or just cut off a receiver, get the ball first, it's special. And Jamar Johnson, I think, would be a great fit and a great addition to that secondary in Vegas. And then we get to the Cardinals here, and I'm going to make the argument that IDL's right here. And you could use some interior guys. You could also use a linebacker. Isaiah Simmons is going to be making the transition to play linebacker, which is where he should be playing. And Alim McNeil is not the 111th best player in this draft, I promise you that. But he is definitely the best run-stopping defensive tackle in this class. And I think that alone provides so much to this defense. I know I mentioned in the last mock, but David Perry, I believe is his name, is right now the starting D tackle in Arizona. If I said it wrong, you'll see text come up at the bottom. But automatically, McNeil's an upgrade there at that defensive tackle spot as a run stopper alone. And it's typically at NC State. It's not a school that typically breeds like defensive pass rushers. I know Bradley Chubb, that's an outside linebacker. And it's a school that's been running a 3-3-5, so 3 down pass rushers. 3 pass rushers at a given time, for the most part. At the NFL level, you're going to typically see 4. Not always, but, majority of the time. And that inherently takes a number of situations where McNeil's getting double-teamed into one-on-ones. And does he win them all? Maybe not. He's not a great pass rusher as of right now, but if you put him in the same room with J.J. Watt, Chandler Jones, Marcus Golden, if you want to group him in there, he's going to get better as a pass rusher. And I think there is plenty of room to grow there. And if he just becomes an average pass rusher with what he can do stopping the run, you got an amazing player in the interior of that line, and it takes that defense to the next level. It makes them go from like good enough to just good to a plus level defense, which that with a great offense will win you a lot of football games. And then if he becomes a plus pass rusher, we're talking about one of the best defensive tackles in football. So I like the potential there with Alim McNeil, but he's also a high floor guy because he's going to stop the run at a high level. And that alone is a big plus for a Cardinals defense that is not great against the run. Then we get to the Dolphins here at 50, and I kind of mentioned it. Maybe it's the pick at 36, but Travis Etienne is on the board. Get him running back of the future and the big play guy. Good compliment to Myles Gaskins, but also a really nice pass catcher. Another option through the air for Tua. Then we get to the Washington football team at 51, and I'd love to go Walker Little here or Brady Christensen, but how could you not go Kellen Mond, right? You have Ryan Fitzpatrick, the textbook bridge quarterback, and you also have Taylor Heineke in the room, but whatever. One playoff game. I'm not necessarily sold yet, but Kellen Mond's the upside play. And at the minimum, I know you have Heineke, but Mond's a better athlete. And at the minimum, he's a guy you can give 10 plays in a playbook, 15 plays, and you take Fitzpatrick out of the game and use Mond's legs, and you force defenses to play him honest. Maybe there's some big plays to be made through the air as well. But I think him learning from Fitzpatrick, I think it's worth the risk here in the second round. I think he could be a potential QB of the future. It's certainly risky, but have him learn from Fitzpatrick, who's been around the league. There's certainly a lot to like there. This could definitely be tackled, but I just don't know how you pass on Mond here. And this could be a QB too. This could be Kyle Trask here for Chicago at 52, but I'm going to go wide receiver. I'm going to give him Kadarius Toney. Slot guy, field stretcher, kind of similar to Darnell Mooney. I think Mooney's more of an outside guy, and Toney's going to be your slot wide receiver moving forward. And then you have put Andy Dalton in a situation where you went Cosmi in round 1, potential upgrade there at left tackle, and you got him another weapon in the slot with Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney on the outside. If you're going to win games with Andy Dalton, you got to put him in a perfect situation. And that might not even be enough because he's just not that good anymore. So I think that's the MO through the first 2 rounds. And then if there's a QB that falls in the 3rd round, which, spoiler, there might be, then you pull the trigger on that. And this is a team that needs defense. They could use a safety so you can play Eddie Jackson full-time and strong. They could use a corner. They got rid of Kyle Fuller. They could use a younger potential replacement to Akeem Hicks. Like, you could always use edge. Robert Quinn's not that good. Like, I mean, he's fine, I guess, but there's a lot of needs on this team, and that's why it's tough. They're picking 20 because they're having to reach down boards, and here at 52, they get great value, though, so they make up with it with Tony, who's a first-round caliber guy. Then we get to the Titans at 53. I'm going cornerback here, and I think Aaron Robinson makes some sense. They bring in Janoris Jenkins. That makes me think they're going to play a lot more man coverage. Robinson obviously fits that. Robinson typically has been a nickel guy. I don't know if his feet are fast enough to play on the outside, but at the minimum, he's a great shutdown nickel guy. They don't have Desmond King coming back, so he fills that hole perfectly. And the NFL is a growing 3-corner, 3-wide receiver league, so a nickel guy is very valuable, and I think it's worth a 2nd-round pick. But maybe he could make the position move to eventually play outside. But a position of need, Aaron Robinson, maybe the best corner available. So definitely like the pick there for Tennessee. Then we get to the Colts here at 54. This is a tackle. This is a tackle, no doubt about it. And I'm gonna go ahead and make it Walker Little. Typically, I've had him falling into round 3, but I don't know if he makes it that far. PFF has him as a 1st-round guy. Everyone else is kind of scattered thereafter. But when you look at his tape, when you did get to see him play, he was a great tackle. And he was somebody before the injuries who he said 2020 he could be the best offensive tackle in the class. And that was a loaded offensive tackle class. Then he gets injured and, has played like 2 snaps or whatever the last 2 years. Not a whole lot. But considering he was really, really good a couple years ago, and we haven't seen him since, the curve is there. Like, if he's got that high of a floor, just think about how much better he could get with a lot of reps, especially working with NFL coaches. And you have him next to Quentin Nelson, obviously also helps. I think there's a sky-high ceiling there with Walker Little. And kind of like what I said with Caleb Farley, he might not be able to play like a great 12-year career, but man, if he can give you a great 8 years, that's the window in which the Colts can win a Super Bowl. They might be able to go beyond that, obviously, but Little could definitely take this team into that Super Bowl contention area over the next 8 years if he can stay on the field enough. Regardless, let's get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got to start picking it up. This video is getting a little long. Steelers at 55, so had him go running back in round 1. And now Landon Dickerson, who they might consider taking at 24, is still on the board. And it's not even that I've ignored it to make it fit. I like these picks for every other team. And even if Landon Dickerson's taken, let's say the Bengals take him the top of round 2 instead of Alex Leatherwood, which I think Leatherwood's a better player right now and less injury concerns than Dickerson. You got Creed Humphrey. And even if he's gone, maybe you'll wait till round 2 and you go Quinn Miners or Josh Myers, who I'm not crazy about Myers, but you go Quinn Miners in round 3 and you go corner here. I'm telling you, I think the Steelers draft class can still work out to be really, really solid, especially even despite them going running back in round 1. Next up is the Seattle Seahawks. I think they need to go corner. This was a historically bad defense last year, and then they lost Shaquille Griffin. So you got to replace that at the minimum. Paulson Adebo is kind of a tough player to mock. Before the year, he was a first-round caliber corner in a lot of people's eyes. Obviously, that's fallen some. But given his athletic measurables, his scheme versatility, good size as well, I think he's worthy of a 2nd-round pick, but he could also be there in round 3 without a doubt. And we're going to stick with cornerback here. We're going to go Elijah Molden. And a lot of the same that I said earlier about Javon Holland, I think this is a slam-dunk pick here for the Rams. Obviously, they lose both Troy Hill and John Johnson III. So you're looking to pick up a nickel corner where Hill played, and Elijah Molden, that's primarily where he played at Washington, and he'll be an elite. Book it down. I think he'll be a top-end, elite-level nickel corner at the NFL. He's great against the run, hard hitter, he wants contact, wants to play around the line of scrimmage, and he's tremendous in coverage. So at the minimum, you're getting a great nickel corner. And I think when you go to a base defense, you kick him out and play safety, just like I said with Holland. Or potentially if you find a different nickel guy, you just play Molden full-time at safety. So it fills a couple of those roles that LA lost in free agency. And plus they have a few 3rd-round picks to go IOL, to go linebacker with once we get to round 3. Then we get to the Ravens here at 58. And I don't really love a lot of the options here. You could go Nico Collins. He's certainly climbing up boards, but with De'Ami Brown still available since I went Elijah Moore earlier, I'm going to make a pivot here. I was going to go Reggie Grant, but instead I'm going to go De'Ami Brown. Similar-ish to Hollywood Brown in the sense that he's just like a big play guy. You need to add to De'Ami Brown's route tree, but I don't see why he can't. And he's got good enough size, 6'1", 195. He could be that bigger body guy that you need on those third and long situations for Lamar Jackson to hit and move the chains and keep a drive alive. So I love this pick here with De'Ami Brown. I'm really glad that I honestly went Elijah Moore earlier with the Lions here at 41 because that allowed me to keep De'Ami Brown here at 58. Hadn't thought about that up until now. Anyways, rambling aside, on to the Cleveland Browns at pick number 59. You could go wide receiver. You could go get a long-term edge option, right? Because like Clowney's on a one-year deal. You also only have Takk McKinley on a one-year deal. But I think you got to go linebacker here. This is tremendous value for Nick Bolton. He's fallen down boards. He's a little small, but I think he's a potential middle linebacker of the future, right? Like Anthony Walker's on a one-year deal, or you play Bolton at weak side linebacker. He could be an upgrade over Taki. So position of need, I like Bolton there, and he's a guy that I think is better than the 59th pick in the draft. Then we get to the Saints here at pick number 60, and I'm going to give him Rondale Moore. He feels like exactly what Sean Payton wants in a dynamic slot wide receiver, right? Like you can do so much with him, and I'd love to see him in Sean Payton's offense drawing up plays just for Rondale Moore. So I feel like that's a match made in heaven. Moore also has like a 42, 43-inch vertical, so maybe he can play some on the outside. But at the minimum, I think he's a dynamic, in-space type of guy. You could line him up at running back. You could play him in the slot. There's a lot you could do with Moore. And I'm lower on him than most, but I can't deny his athletic ability and what he can potentially do at the next level. Bills on the clock at 61. Ifeatu Melifonwu feels like a match made in heaven for that defense. I'm a believer in Levi Wallace, but you can never have too many CBs, right? Injuries are going to happen, and maybe Wallace doesn't take the next step that I think he could. And Ifeatu Melifonwu could just step right on in. Packers on the clock at 62. I'm going to give them a wide receiver here. I think they're looking for a smaller, I don't want to say necessarily gadget, but a slot guy, and I think Amari Rodgers is exactly that. Obviously a guy with a ton of production at Clemson, and just gives you something different than what you have now. Also, he's a guy who, at Clemson, was just manufactured touches. Kind of similar to what we talked about Rondale Moore. Just get him the ball in open space, end arounds, jet sweeps, maybe even line him up at in the running back spot. Gives you different options, and I'd love to see what LaFleur could come up with as a creative play caller, plus an additional weapon, and you hope to ease out the tension between Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Then we get to the Kansas City Chiefs on the clock here at 63, and there's a good amount of tackles left. Liam Eichenberg is somebody I've seen mocked to them in the first round. I kind of worry about his arm length, and maybe the Colts was who I should have given him to, given they played Braden Smith, the only offensive lineman with sub 33-inch arms, but that's at right tackle. I think Brady Christensen has a ton of upside, has the body, has the strength, super athletic. The only knock against him is he played at BYU, didn't see a single elite level edge rusher this past year, which I get, but you need a left tackle, and Christensen beats up on players that he's better than, and that's an admirable trait, and that's something I like about him. So I think he's got to be the pick. And now you're looking at Kansas City with a left tackle, potentially the future, Terrence Marshall in the first round. I love the offensive production. Just getting that offense that much better. It's already elite. Get it that much better. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This could be wide receiver. This could be a slot guy. They haven't brought AB back. I still got a feeling he's gonna come back. I think he's gonna lower his money request, and if not, also Tyler Johnson. I think there's options there to fill the slot, and also slots. I feel like an easier to replace. It's hard to replace a Mike Evans on the outside compared to a 30 plus year old Antonio Brown in the slot. Though I'm not saying Antonio Brown was not great last year, especially down the stretch. This could also be QB of the future in Kyle Trask. But with Levi Onwuzurike still on the board, I think he's worthy. Top 64 level pick. Great interior disruptor, and his burst, his ability to get off the line of scrimmage, is second to none in this IDO class, and that includes Christian Barmore. His burst off the line is elite, and this is your Ndamukong Suh replacement of the future. So the way I kind of broke it down was Suh's only going to be around for one more year. Brady's under contract for 2. So Onwuzurike feels somewhat more of an immediate need. Plus, you can just rotate him in if Vita Vea who has battled injuries, gets hurt, or if Ndamukong Suh in an older age battles injuries, Onwuzurike can just step right in. Top of the third round, I'm sticking IDL. This could be Davion Nixon or Milton Williams. I'm going to go with Davion Nixon. I like his tape a lot at Iowa. I know people have said he doesn't show up in big games, but we're talking about the top of the third round here, and his potential is there. Big Ten, Defensive Player of the Year. You have to like that to a certain extent. And this is your Taven Bryan replacement at the worst. Like, he can't get any worse than Taven Bryan, really, because Taven Bryan has not improved or developed like the Jags hoped he would. So Taven Bryan at the minimum is just a swap there with Bryan, but I think he has a higher ceiling, and I like Nixon a lot. And this could also be Milton Williams, who I also think is fantastic, but he's not going to be on the board much longer. Spoiler alert. Next up, the Jets at 66. This is the end of the slide for Liam Eichenberg. They're looking for a potential right tackle replacement for George Fant. He could be the replacement to Van Roten at right guard. Eichenberg can do a lot of different things, and I think this is where the sliding stops for him. And it's kind of remarkable that I couldn't fit him in the first 2 rounds. That speaks to how deep the offensive tackle class is in general. And also, I haven't even talked about, look at the IOL guys. Creed Humphrey still available. Wyatt Davis, Quinn Miners, Trey Smith. You know, like, it's tough. It's hard to fit all these offensive linemen, but you're going to start seeing a lot of these interior guys flying off the board here in round 3. Just a heads up. But outside of Mekhi Becton, that offensive line needs to get better. Liam Eichenberg feels like a great fit and a big plus to that Jets offensive line. Next up, we have the Houston Texans. So they're going to be getting that 3-4 defense, and I think they need edge rusher big time. This could also be corner, no doubt about it. It could be IDL, it could be wide receiver as well. I wouldn't knock Nico Collins. I wouldn't knock Tylan Wallace, Amon-Ra St. Brown, or any of these corners. Like Tyson Campbell would probably be the one I take here. But I'm going to go with a guy who I think fits Lovie Smith's power rush mold for an outside linebacker a lot, in Jordan Smith. And maybe he's more of a 4th-round guy, but I think the upside is there. Talk about a guy who has the athletic ability, has production at UAB. Granted, it's UAB. I get it. It's not like a Power 5 school. I like a lot from what I see from Jordan Smith. I like a lot. So I feel like he fits what Lovie Smith wants in an outside linebacker and as an edge rusher, and it's a big-time position of need. So with limited picks this year, sometimes you want to go high floor guys, so you can't miss but so much. But I think here you go high upside. I really like what Jordan Smith could do in that defense. And obviously, when the Texans were good, they had J.J. Watt. They had Jadeveon Clowney being productive. They had Whitney Merciless. They had Benardrick McKinney playing at a high level. They need to get that defense back to at least an average level if they're going to win and be any sort of competitive moving forward. Anyways, moving on to the Falcons. I think this is just an absolute steal in Peyton Turner. Tremendous value. And he's climbing up boards. He fits to an extent. I think he's better as a 4-3 end, but I think he can play 3-4 defensive end, which in that Dean Pease defense, I think is obviously something that's a big-time upgrade. Peyton Turner, fantastic value here in the top of round number 3. And then the Bengals here at pick number 69. I think somebody that is climbing up boards faster than I anticipated. This could also be offensive line, by the way. There's no need to stop. There's plenty of holes to fix. This could be Creed Humphrey, but I'm going to give him Baron Browning. Fits that 4-3 defense. Linebacker is a bigger position need than I think the Draft Network gives it credit for, or gives it discredit, however you would want to word that. But Baron Browning playing off the ball in a 4-3, he's super athletic, has experience doing it. You like that. I almost like him more in a 3-4 defense and just making the move to outside linebacker. I am all in with Mike Renner and the idea that his best reps come rushing the passer. He is super explosive, and he has the makings, and he has, like, you can see the hands. He's getting there as a pass rusher, and I think full-time, if a team could coach him up and play 3-4 outside linebacker, I think there's a lot to be had there with Baron Browning. But nonetheless, even as a 4-3 Sam linebacker or a Will linebacker, you could use him as a blitzer up the middle, off the edge, whatever. So this is a position of need more than I think the Draft Network ranks it as. And Baron Browning, one of the best players left on the board. So again, A-plus caliber draft here for Cincinnati in my eyes. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles at pick number 70. It's criminal Jabril Cox is still on the board. I mean, you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't go Cox here. They need linebacker. Cox is super athletic, super rangy, and he almost kind of makes me think about what linebacker should be. Like, it's tough to play linebacker in general, but with the innovation of the modern NFL and such a big passing game and the addition of RPOs, it's like linebackers are just left out to dry. And Jabril Cox is just kind of like the embodiment of that. Like, he may not always take the best route to a ball carrier. He might not always be in the right place at the right time in the passing game, but he's so athletic and his makeup speed is tremendous. So at linebacker, I'm almost feeling like that's the trait we should start valuing. Like, obviously, like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Micah Parsons, those guys are different. But like once you get to round 3, it's like, who can quickly get to the mistake? Who can quickly adjust off the RPO? Once they realize it's not going to be handoff, they're going to throw a slant right behind you. Who can get there quick enough and minimize the damage done on that play? But I don't know. That's just my take. Let me know what you think about that in that comment section, though. I think that's what the future of the linebacking position. If you're drafting in the 3rd round a linebacker, get a guy with makeup speed. And I think Jabril Cox has plenty to do with. That didn't plenty to work with. Apologies for that. Next up, the Denver Broncos. I think you go offensive line here. Jackson Carman has that inside-out versatility. Well, not really out, but I think he's a guard in the making. You could also just go interior offensive line. Dalton Reisner is okay. Also have Glasnow on a moderately big deal, and Lloyd Cushenberry wasn't fantastic last year, so I'm going to give him Creed Humphrey here. And also, it's just wild that he's still on the board at 71. Again, that's how deep this class is. And moving on to the Lions, I promised you Milton Williams was not going to be available much longer. You got Michael Brockers for a year. Milton Williams can learn from him and be that long-term IDL disruptor that they haven't had since Ndamukong Suh, in my opinion. So I think that's fantastic. I think it's a great fit. And maybe if you keep Brockers around, maybe he's the replacement to Trey Smith, depending on what defense the Lions stick with as their base. Nonetheless, moving on to the Panthers here at 43. They lost Curtis Samuel in free agency. Why not give him that gadget slot wide receiver they lost? Dwayne Eskridge. I know they brought in David Moore, and you could play DJ Moore from the slot, or you could even have David Moore be a bigger slot guy. But give Sam Darnold, give Teddy B, whoever's under center, give them options. Give them plenty of weapons. And in my eyes, Dwayne Eskridge could easily be that jet sweep, end around, put him in the backfield type of guy Curtis Samuel was. And he was a big part of the offense. Also, with wide receivers, injuries are going to happen. DJ Moore's battled him. Robbie Anderson's battled him. David Moore's battled him. So have that next guy up. I think Dwayne Eskridge is a slam dunk pick here at the top of round 3. Then we get to the Washington football team here at 74. A couple of good options here at tackle. And that's why I said you can wait. And I mean, none of these guys are as high an upside as someone like Christian Darrisaw, right? But Darrisaw wasn't on the board. You were picking between Walker Little, who has question marks, or someone like Liam Eichenberg, who the short arms, again, creates some problems. Do you want that? Dylan Radunz feels like more of a second-round guy than the 19th pick in the draft. And he wasn't on the board in the second round when you took Mons. So I think you stand pat, you wait. I like the upside with James Hudson, super athletic, and honestly fared really well against Azeez Ojulari in the Sugar Bowl, if I'm getting that right. And then when he got hurt, Azeez Ojulari just took that game over. Brendan James is a super a player with a ton of accolades from Nebraska. You also got Spencer Brown, who I think is more of a right tackle. Stone Forsythe, I think, is a good sleeper here. Has the size you want. An experienced player, as you saw there, coming off his redshirt senior year at Florida. So I would lean between Hudson and Forsythe. We'll go upside here with Hudson. I do like Forsythe, though. But Hudson has that athletic ability and has plenty of room to grow. So we'll give him Hudson here at 74. And I told you the Cowboys, I'm not done giving them defense. I'm going to give them a nose tackle, which sounds crazy, but if Gallimore can be your interior disruptor, then you have Basham and DeMarcus Lawrence on the outside, and you added Patrick Surtain, that offense is good. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot of needs, and you could go swing tackle, but I think there's options here at 99 that we'll get to that can fit that swing tackle inside-out type of versatility. So I think here at 75, you go best nose tackle available, and that's Marlon Tuipulotu. In my opinion, it could also be J. Tufele. Maybe you reach a little bit with Tyler Shelvin. You could also get Shelvin probably in the 4th round, who's great against the run. But I like Tuipulotu here for that Dallas defense. 3 picks, 3 defensive players. Try to take this team to the next level. Then we get to the Giants at 76. A couple of options you could go with. I think you turn to the interior offensive line. Wyatt Davis is a steal here. You could use a guard. You could also use a center maybe, but I think Wyatt Davis is that right guard replacement after you cut Kevin Zeitler. Then we're back with the Chargers at 77. I'm going to give them, I'm going to give them Benjamin Juiced, excuse me. He fits that man press defense that Brandon Staley wants to play. I'm not saying he's Jalen Ramsey, but he has the size and the frame and the physicality to be a man press type of corner. Again, not saying it's Jalen Ramsey, but similar mold, a little bit bigger actually. But nonetheless, Benjamin Juiced, I feel like is a really solid pick there and fills a position need, especially on the outside corner position. Now we're on to the Vikings at pick number 78, and Ronnie Perkins was a guy who I think was misused at Oklahoma. They just didn't get the most out of him. And I think him in a 4-3 defense did run some stunts at Oklahoma, but I think he's a tremendous fit at 4-3. Gives some help for Danielle Hunter on the other end of the defensive line. And Perkins also, I think, is a solid run defender. So you're adding to the group of Dalvin Tomlinson, Michael Pierce, guys who can stop the run at a high level. So we give him IOL in round 1 with Elijah Vera Tucker. No round 2 pick after the trade for Yannick Ngakoue. And now we give him some edge help who really, in a lot of ways, is just replacing the whole of not keeping Yannick Ngakoue around. So on to back-to-back Raiders picks. This could be IDL. I don't hate that pick. I think Solomon Thomas is fine for right now. We'll start with a pick I think they definitely should make in Chaz Surratt. Guy who was a QB at North Carolina when he first went to the Tar Heels program. Made the move to linebacker again. Makeup speed. Kind of has that Jabril Cox factor to him. Super athletic. Still learning the position though. So, still working those kinks out. And obviously, hole at center after trading Rodney Hudson. I think Quinn Miners can play center. He can also be a guard of the future. A guy with some versatilities. I like Quinn Miners there. Though I will say, it does make sense to maybe go with an interior penetrator like Osa Odigizua, maybe. But nonetheless, I like Quinn Miners and Chaz Surratt. Good balance, offense versus defense. Back on the clock here is Miami. And I'm going to give them a 3-4 outside linebacker. I know they went Zaven Collins earlier, and Collins still might play inside linebacker, but they need 2 edge rushers, specifically if Andrew Van Ginkel doesn't work out. If Van Ginkel's fine, then really they only needed the 1. But I'm not sure the limited production is going to pan out over a 17 full load as a starter for Van Ginkel. But we'll see. He's going into his 3rd year. We'll see if he can make that leap. But if it doesn't, you have Quincy Roche ready to go as a potential edge option opposite of Zaven Collins. Feels like good value, obviously. Played at Miami, NFL team, Miami Dolphins. Kind of works out well there. Not that that's why you make the pick. Next up, back to the Washington football team. And this is kind of a tough pick to be made here because I don't know if I love really any of the safety fits. Plus, we went Jeremiah Wusu-Koramoah. So I don't know, you could go Richie Grant, who kind of feels like an in-box safety. Same thing with Divine Diablo, who was actually, I think, told he's going to be playing like a sub-linebacker type of role. Could also go corner. You can never have too many of those types of players. If Kendall Fuller gets hurt, if William Jackson gets hurt, whatever the case may be. But I think I'm going to go wide receiver, and I'm going to give him Nico Collins, right? They went Antonio Gandy Golden a couple of years ago. They have Charles Sims, who's 6'5". So there's no need to rush Collins in, and I don't think he's ready to start day 1. There's going to be some polishing needed, no doubt about it, but just have him sit behind Sims and have him sit behind Gandy Golden. But I also think Collins has a higher upside than Gandy Golden. He showed improvement as the year went on at Michigan. I think he's obviously got higher upside than Charles Sims too. So maybe not a year 1 impact guy, but maybe in year 2, he's the big body guy with McLaurin on the outside and Curtis Samuel in the slot, and maybe Kellen Mond under center. Whew, with a great defense on the other side of the ball. Washington making moves, putting together a strong case to be Super Bowl contenders in the coming years. Back on the clock with Chicago. I kind of winked at it earlier. Kyle Trask still available. Again, Tampa could have taken him at the end of round 2, and I wouldn't have knocked it. But I think here with him on the board at 83, Chicago would be crazy not to take him as maybe the guy of the future. No guarantees, not super mobile, not great when a play breaks down and going off script, but neither is Andy Dalton, so maybe he just learns how to cope with it from a guy like Andy Dalton, or just maybe from a year's development, he just hones his skills enough to where you can overlook those weaknesses like we have with Brady, or maybe you could even say Andy Dalton when he was playing at a better level in his prime in Cincinnati. Nonetheless, on to the Eagles here at 84. Gave him a linebacker earlier, and I think IOL should be the focus here. Trey Smith's great value. I think he's better than 96. I think Smith's right there. If you saw my offensive position rankings video, I think he's right there in the group with guys like Quinn Miners and Creed Humphrey and those types of guards. And Aaron Banks is in that cluster as well. So I think this is a great fit. You're looking for maybe a guy to replace Brandon Brooks, who's continued to battle injuries, also getting old. I don't know if Smith could play center, but you're also looking for a potential center replacement one day when Kelsey isn't playing for you. So maybe Quinn Miners is the pick here if he's available, and Smith goes to the Raiders. I could see those being flopped. But nonetheless, like that pick a lot, and you're trying to boost up that interior. And again, this is a pick that'll make the running back happy. Miles Sanders will be smiling from ear to ear. On to the Tennessee Titans. And this is a tricky one, right? Like Spencer Brown, athletic-wise, trait-wise, is there. And right in the Isaiah Wilson pick obviously didn't work. I think Spencer Brown's tape leaves a lot to be desired. He's not developed, but I don't know if he needs to start day one. And I think he could be the right tackle of the future after a year of sitting, learning, and adjusting to the game speed. But you could also potentially take Brendan James, flip him over to right tackle. You could take Stone Forsythe, who I think would be better fit in a pass-heavy offense. I think he's a better pass blocker than run blocker right now. But still, the fit could be made for Tennessee. But I'm going to give him Spencer Brown, who has the athletic measurables, has the side, just needs to be coached up. And now we're back to the Jets, again, on the clock here at 86. I'm going to give him Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who has inside and outside versatility, but I think, and the tape really was pretty equal between 2020 on the outside, 2019 in the slot, but I think he's the slot guy of the future. You still have Jamison Crowder under contract. You also signed Keelan Cole, who are both slot guys, so maybe Amon-Ra is just a rotational guy, and maybe he even rotates to play on the outside some. But nonetheless, after this upcoming season, when you lose Crowder, you lose Keelan Cole, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown can be that slot guy. You have Mims, Davis on the outside, Amon-Ra St. Brown as your slot wide receiver. Again, just building the future, putting weapons in place for Zach Wilson. So, and plus just one of the better players available at this point at pick number 86. Then we get to the Steelers at pick number 87, and Tyson Campbell, certainly tempting. I wouldn't hate that pick. He feels like a bit of a project, though, and has the size that the Steelers are looking for, so I wouldn't doubt that this is a Tyson Campbell spot. Don't get me wrong. But a guy who's way too low, criminally low, is Tay Gowan. He is not 215 in this class, I promise you. Only 1 year at the FBS level. He played at a lower level than the 1 year at UCF, where he was fantastic, then had to opt out of 2020 because of COVID. But I like Tay Gowan's tape. And again, size, 6'2", 185. So you can make the same argument with Tyson Campbell and you have fresher tape. But Gowan was fantastic in 2019. And again, sat out a year. You feel like that curve, he can continue to get better. There's still some reps to improve him. And even if you like Justin Lane starting on the outside, Gowan can just sit for a year, continue to get better, and be a rotational piece. Again, you can never have enough corners. Plus, Joe Hayden's old. So even if you like Justin Lane and he plays well next year, Tay Gowan can be the Hayden replacement of the future. Hayden's like, 32, 33, I think? So, and again, I'm going to hit on this just because I'm a Steelers fan. If there's any Steelers fans listening, if you're not crazy about Najee Harris going round one, which I don't think running backs typically should go in round one, but the Steelers have gotten a running back of the future in Harris, a center of the future, big-time replacement after the retirement of Marquise Pouncey, and Landon Dickerson, and then you go get a starting corner, potential starting corner in Tay Gowan. I don't think they want to go tackle. I think they're comfortable with Chukwu Okorafor at left tackle and Zach Banner at right. And third year for Chugs, that's typically when we see tackles take the leap. I'm starting to get comfortable with the idea of him at left tackle, but I might be crazy for that. I might be regretting that in a year's time. So check back with this video at that time. Regardless, let's move on to the Rams here. They have a couple of picks left on the board, but here at 88, I'm just going to give him the best interior offensive lineman. Actually, I'm going to have to give him Josh Myers, who I'm not crazy about. Gives up a ton of pressures, which is really worrisome, especially at the center position. But they lost Austin Blythe. They don't have a center. So Josh Myers, plug-and-play guy there, makes a ton of sense to me. Then we get to the Cleveland Browns, making 2 picks over a 3-pick window, if you will. Corner, I think this is where Tyson Campbell, this is as low as he goes. 89 was probably as low as he goes. 89 or 91. One of these 2 picks. So I like Tyson Campbell a lot. Obviously, good size. And Grady Williams has battled so many injuries, and at this point, it feels like that pick hasn't totally panned out. He was a second-round pick, so it's not as big of a pick like when they made the selection to take Denzel Ward. But Greedy Williams just struggles to stay on the field. So Tyson Campbell is kind of your insurance there, but I think still needs to be polished and refined as a cornerback in general. Then we get back to the Vikings. I feel like this is a great Richie Grant spot. Really, I contemplated giving Richie Grant to them in the second round, but with the Ravens going De'Ami Brown instead of Richie Grant, he's still on the board, and I think this might be as low as he goes. I don't know. He's tough because he's not necessarily fast when it comes to his measurables, but then you watch his tape, and he's so instinctual that he plays faster, right? Like, I don't remember who said it, but the best thing they could say about him is game speed. He looks fantastic, but then the biggest knock on him is his actual speed, like what he measures it and clocks in at. But Grant's also just a force at the line of scrimmage, right? So I could see him both being a deep center field guy, rangy free safety, and a replacement to Anthony Harris, who lost this free agency, but also maybe a long-term replacement for a guy like Harrison Smith. I could see both, considering how good he is against the run. Harrison Smith can't play forever, and you need to replace that position eventually. But simultaneously, while you still have Harrison Smith playing, I like Richie Grant as a deep safety. He's not super fast, but again, you're playing so far away from the line of scrimmage. He's instinctual, and he's quick enough, and he takes good routes to the football. I think he can be that center field replacement that you lost with the departure of Anthony Harris. Back on the clock is the Cleveland Browns. This could be wide receiver. I don't hate it per se. I'm just going to go Janarius Robinson. They need a 4-3 end of the future. Maybe they re-sign Clowney. Maybe they re-sign Takk McKinley. Maybe Takk McKinley figures out how to be a productive edge rusher. But Janarius Robinson, a guy who didn't really perform all that great at Florida State, but it's just tough to grade players from that program, right? Like, that's just a program that's just really taken a steep nosedive, right? Like, if this was the Florida State of a few years ago, 5-10 years ago, I think we'd be looking at guys like Marvin Willison, who's still available, Janarius Robinson, or I think Asante Samuel, who's already a first-round kind of guy. But I think, that program, if it had further developed and also just, produced better games and made it more appealing to watch Florida State, and, of course, with the production and the development as well, I think a lot of these guys would be moving upwards big time. Janarius Robinson just feels like he didn't have his potential fully used at Florida State. Cleveland might be able to do it, and he's not going to be rushed into a starting spot, right? Like, he's not starting over Clowney or Garrett or even Takk McKinley right now. This could also be IOL. I don't hate the idea of Aaron Banks, right? Like, Wyatt Teller's a free agent at the end of this season. I think they re-sign him. But in 2 years' time, you have J.C. Treader and Joel Bitonio as free agents. And it's tough to pay 5 offensive linemen, right? So it's that next man up mentality. But I think they re-signed Teller, and instead of using a third-round pick on Aaron Banks to get a guy who might be a starter in 2 years' time, I'd just soon take Janarius Robinson, who might be a starter in a year's time. At the worst, is a rotational piece in 1 year's time. And the next year, you draft IOL. But nonetheless, I'm rambling aside. Then we get to the Green Bay Packers here at 92. Here I'll go Stone Forsythe. I think he can be a plug-and-play starting right tackle. He played left tackle at Florida, but I think you play him at right tackle. Right now, it's Billy Turner in that spot. It could be Elton Jenkins. I think Elton Jenkins would be a really good right tackle. So maybe you go IOL, get a guy who could play center. But I think you go Forsythe here. You kick Turner back inside to play guard, and I think Jenkins is projected to start at center, which I think he'd be good at that too. But regardless, you're just giving yourself options for Green Bay. You're trying to plug and play, find the best 5 potential starters across that offensive line. On to the Bills at pick number 93, and I'm going to do it again. There's not a whole lot of holes on this Bills roster. We gave him a corner earlier who could start on the outside. We give him a great pick in the first round with Kwity Paye at edge. Could go wide receiver. I like Gabriel Davis, and this could be like a nickel guy moving forward, or a slot wide receiver, like a Tutu Atwell, who's super small, a Cade Johnson, an Anthony Schwartz. But I think, again, you might be able to wait on Tutu Atwell, especially with how light he is, like 148, I think is what he just weighed in at the other day. That's scary small. Cade Johnson's probably a top of day 3 guy. I don't know if you get to him in the 4th round, but be aggressive, trade up if you really like him. Anthony Schwartz might be available, and you're picking the 4th round. Tylan Wallace could be a long-term replacement to Emmanuel Sanders. but feels kind of similar to Gabriel Davis. No, either way, I'm going nose tackle. This could be Tommy Tugiai, but I'm going to give him Jay Tufele, who opted out of 2020 and looked really good in 2018. 2019 was good. He just didn't take that next step. But I think after sitting out for a year, and he's probably only a 2-down guy, so you might be thinking, why use a 3rd-round pick on a 2-round guy? Well, it's a roster that doesn't have a whole lot of holes, and they need to get better against the run. So you have Tufele as a 1st and 2nd down run-stopping beast. Maybe this is Tyler Shelvin, too, from LSU. But you have that guy who fits that niche, and it'll make a big difference. And then you force teams to get in 3rd and long situations. You can take them off the field, and you can bring in Mario Addison, kick him inside if you have Pay and Epineza. Or Epineza, I think, actually would be fantastic to do this with. Tufele, in running situations, obvious passing downs, you kick Epineza and the interior as a pass rusher. So giving yourself options. And that's the difference between a good and a great football team, especially here in the later rounds. You're looking for niche guys, and Tufele can be that nose tackle, niche run stopper. Regardless, moving on to the Chiefs at pick number 94, I'm going to give them Pete Werner, super athletic linebacker. You're trying to work up that core. You still have Willie Gay Jr., who I like, but obviously you're going to need a couple linebackers on the field at the same time, and I feel like Werner is one of the better players available here at 94. Then we get to the Bucs here at pick number 95, and this could be a Tylan Wallace spot. Wouldn't hate that. It could be honestly that could be a Chris Godwin replacement if they don't figure out a long-term extension. But I'm actually going to give them their Leonard Fournette replacement in Michael Carter. I don't know about this pick, but Michael Carter's worthy of a 3rd-round pick, and I cannot see him falling into round 4. So Leonard Fournette comes back on a small deal. But moving forward, Carter and Rojo backfield, really solid compliments. Rojo can be the big play guy, also a really good pass catcher. I think Michael Carter could be a good pass catcher, but one cut, big bowling ball kind of running back. I think it's a good fit in Tampa Bay. Next up, we get the New England Patriots. Again, this could be Tylan Wallace, but they spent money at wide receiver, and it looks like they're going to want to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, so really only going to see 2 receivers on the field at once. Gilmore's on a 1-year deal. J.C. Jackson is going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this upcoming year. I could see Robert Rochelle being a guy they like, a smaller school guy, but I'm going to go with Elijah Griffin. You have some injury concerns, but when it comes to size and frame of a corner, he's got it, and he's also super talented. It's really just the injuries that you're worried about. But also, like I said, it could be Robert Rochelle at this spot here for New England. Then we get to the Chargers at 97, and I'm going to give them somebody they just don't have. Tylan Wallace, straight speed. I mean, this guy, he ran a 4.5, but he plays way faster than a 4.5. I think this is a great fit, and Keenan Allen already does a lot in the slot. They are one of those teams that, just like the Bears last year, but the Chargers were quicker to it, putting your best wide receiver in the slot, lining him up against potentially the 3rd best corner on the opposing team, and just especially with Keenan Allen, he's not the fastest guy. So a lot of his work is done as a good route runner, getting open and doing stuff over the middle of the field. It makes sense. And then you have Mike Williams, who is a free agent at the end of this year, and Tylan Wallace on the outside. Williams could be Keenan Allen's kind of an X, but Williams could be that big body complement to Wallace being the speed threat, field stretcher, just opening up the field, especially for work underneath for guys like Jared Cook at tight end and Williams and Keenan Allen. So I think this is a great fit. And this is a guy who, this is going to sound kind of crazy, but if the Packers took him at 29, I'd be like, maybe there were some other guys I would have taken ahead of him, but I don't hate it just because I love Tylan Wallace. Oklahoma State did not use him to his fullest potential, just streaks and comebacks and an occasional post, only on the right side of the field. Get him in the NFL level and get him in a system that'll know how to use him to his fullest potential, and I think the Chargers might be it. Back to the Saints here at 98, winding down here in our 3rd round mock. Hopefully you've enjoyed. I know this is a long video and a lot to sit through, but if you've enjoyed, please hit that like button. It wouldn't mean the world to me. And comment your thoughts. Don't forget, comment what you think I got right, what I got wrong, and who your favorite team is, and your ideal. What would you want to see them do in the first 3 rounds? So the Saints here at 98. I'm going to go ahead and give him linebacker Cameron McGrone, super athletic. This could also be a Derek Barnes spot. I know a couple of guys who are starting to get hot on Derek Barnes, and he's kind of picking up buzz at the right time. And with Barnes getting hot at the right time, I could see that. But Cameron McGrone, I think, is somebody we've all kind of been on board with throughout the process. But McGrone or Barnes, take your favorite of the two here at 98. McGrone's super athletic, pretty instinctual linebacker in my opinion, and obviously a position of need for the Saints. Now we get to the Cowboys at 99. I'm going to give them their swing offensive lineman. Could be Robert Hainsey. I think he's pretty much a guard at the next level. And this could be Jackson Carman, but again, just like Hainsey, I think he's a guard. So I'm going to give him Brendan James, who has a very accomplished career at left tackle at Nebraska, but I also could definitely see his future at guard. So I think he's got more versatility to actually play tackle if something were to happen to Tyron Smith or Lyle Collins or something like that compared to Carman or Hainsey. Next up, the Titans. I love this pick. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so it's my bias, but Tommy Tremble is by far the best blocking tight end in this class. Does a lot of what you're going to lose with Jonnu Smith. Also, he can leak out. He's a good athlete. So they didn't really ask Jonnu Smith to do anything crazy. Like, go to Jonnu Smith's stats from last year. There was never a game where he had like 8 catches, 100 yards. He didn't have a Kelsey, Waller, Kittle type of game. They're asking him to do just enough, be a red zone threat, and be a good blocker. Tommy Tremble can be all of those things. This is a seamless fit. And you look at this Tennessee draft, Bateman in the first, Aaron Robinson in the second, and then Tremble here in the third. So you have your Corey Davis replacement, your Jonnu Smith replacement, both cheaper, younger, have some great upside, and you got a corner, a nickel guy to replace Desmond King, or just a corner in general, which was a position of need. Fantastic draft in my eyes, if this is how it played out for Tennessee. Back on the clock is the Detroit Lions. We gave him Penei Sewell, we gave him a wide receiver in the slot, and we've given him an interior offensive lineman. And here at 101, I could give him Derek Barnes, but I'm buying into Divine Diablo as this sub-linebacker. 6'3", 226, right in the 4.5s, maybe even 4.4s. I'm buying into it. Maybe it's a little early for Diablo, but late round 3, a safety turn linebacker, I'm all about it, man. Like him and Jelani Tavai, at the minimum, I think if he's not a Mike, he could be used as like kind of what the Cowboys plan on using Keanu Neal as like a good will linebacker. So I love the pick there. But this could certainly be Barnes. If they just want a prototypical linebacker, especially one who can blitz a little bit better, I think Derek Barnes definitely has the edge in that category. Next up is the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going best interior offensive lineman. Alex Max on a 1-year deal. They kind of already have a hole at right guard. I'll give him Aaron Banks. I think he's just the best of these guys. Don't know if he's necessarily a perfect fit in that zone run scheme. Maybe you go with Jackson Carman and move him to guard. But I think Banks is good enough to be not scheme dependent. I think Banks can just go out there and do the job. Additionally, Kyle Shanahan just makes it work. Like, he just makes it work. So you get Banks, and good upgrade there at right guard. Back on the clock is the LA Chargers, and I know they're looking for a tackle of the future, but I don't know about any of these options. They need linebacker. Derek Barnes makes a ton of sense, and honestly, I'll stand by it. If Barnes goes here to the Lions at 101, get Divine Diablo and have him as that safety turn linebacker in this defense. This is a really good team that already needed linebacker, and yeah, they can't push that need off but so far. But I think Derek Barnes is great value here at the end of round 3. All right, 2 picks to go. I promise we are almost done. For the Ravens, I'm going to go with another safety turned linebacker in Hamza Nasirudeen. I definitely foresee him playing linebacker. And also the Ravens use 3 safeties, so I'd love to go tackle as the potential Orlando Brown replacement, but I don't know if I really like any of these guys staying at tackle. Maybe Deonta Smith, Aiden Early, maybe, but I'm not entirely sure about either one of those options. So go out there and get another safety. Use 3 of them. Nasir Adderley, I see the upside, and obviously a great frame, and just add some more versatility and some more athletic ability in the back end of that Ravens defense. Final pick we'll make. This could definitely be edge. Wouldn't knock the Elderson Smith pick here, or Cameron Sample would be a fantastic. You know what? I was going to go IDL with Marvin Wilson because I'd love to see him actually go to a team that could develop him and to a really solid player. And Osa Odigizua could definitely be in play here, but I totally forgot Cameron Sample is still available. Some of these teams definitely would be crazy to pass on him. Sample might be like the first pick off the board in the top of day 3, but Sample's getting hot at the right time, and you see why. Explosiveness, just needs to become a little bit more refined as a pass rusher. No Wendy Hughes moves. It's more about like the football IQ more than like maybe like the actual pass rushing moves themselves. But love that pick. That's your Trey Hendrickson replacement, and potentially if Marcus Davenport doesn't step up, he's Samples the replacement to Davenport as well, as Davenport did last year of his contract. But I know a long video, but that will bring a close to my 3-round NFL updated mock draft. Tell me what you think in the comment section down below. What picks did I get right? Where was I wrong? Who did I have falling too far? And who did I have coming off the board too soon? I'd love to have your thoughts, and I'd love to have a good discussion, a respectful discussion in the comment section below. Hope you all enjoyed. Hit the like button if you did. If you're new to the channel, want more sports content, please consider subscribing. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name's Siege, and I am signing off.
Part of the last generation that remembers time of God.